Hi, Mandy.
Hey, Virginia.
How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me. You're gorgeous. I'm like noticing the difference between your environment and mine. I'm like, I need to get some color in here.
No, you have like this very like cool, calming feel. Mine is like explosion of camper van color. So,
I really love it. I really prefer it.
oh, well, as you know, am looking forward to hopefully getting to come visit you one of these days in Washington. And
I'm looking forward to that too.
and we've known each other since we met back in Cody. I don't know, what has it been? Like 5 years now or something?
Yeah, I think it honestly is 6 years. I think it was 2015
Wow.
that I,
And
yeah,
you
I
continue
think
to be
2016.
one of
We met in
the,
early 2016. It was early 2016 that you and I met.
okay. Yeah. So, I mean, you opened up my world back then to hypnotherapy. We just, had an immediate soul connection, and you continue to be one of the bravest, most intelligent, radically healing people that I know. And I would love for you to just talk a little bit about what it is that you do.
Thank you for that. The minute that you said that, it brought me literally back to the moment where we were meeting. It was like a very dark restaurant bar seating area, and we were crammed very close together. And you were with a boyfriend from back then, and I was in a similar position. And when I said what I did, I think you like looked at me like I had your full attention all of a sudden. I didn't know you were so naturally interested. And I think it's really interesting that you remind me of that because I forgot that you really didn't know a lot. Maybe even I'm not saying it correctly, but you didn't really know a lot about that back then, but
No.
you were very pulled towards it and drawn to it.
Yes.
Of course, you had natural capability for it because, which I'll get into this, but maybe now is a good time. I mean,
Dive
I work
in.
in altered states of consciousness. So I actually am trying to shy away from that word altered states because I really don't prefer it. Um, Non-ordinary state of consciousness is a lot more neutral. And
Mm.
critical thinking and awareness where our conscious mind and our analytical capability is online. And that state of awareness is typically characterized by beta brainwaves. So it's something that's very measurable. You can hook up an EEG on a person's head and discover what their brains are doing. And each kind of bandwidth, frequency bandwidth set from beta, alpha, theta, and delta are characterized by a different experience that we would have as the user, as the person whose brain is running that frequency. And I think that's really interesting because a lot of times when you can utilize a certain state is useful for different things. So if you need focus and problem solving, planning, scheduling, logic, objectivity, etc., we as humans have that beta spectrum that like animals don't have. Most animals that I'm aware of don't have the ability to operate in that. And that's why we have our conscious reasoning and critical reasoning skills. But alpha brain waves, that is the waking but relaxed state of awareness. So it's a useful, waking, relaxed state of awareness where the critical mind is resting. And alpha brainwave spectrum is basically where all healing occurs in the body. Sometimes if people say, well, have you been in trance? Because if we're asleep, if we're unconscious, we know what that feels like. We're unconscious. Usually you don't remember things that happen in sleep. But dreaming is a more conscious state of unconscious state. It's the dream state, and that's its own frequency bandwidths. And waking state, you are actually, you're going to remember it. But if you're in a daydream, that's altered state of consciousness. So
Okay.
people wonder, have I ever experienced trance, or what would it feel like to utilize that state of awareness? And the thing is, adults are in and out of that state all the time. Most of the times they just don't know how to access it on purpose or what it's useful for. And that's where we really started jamming early in our relationship.
Yes. So take us through, I mean, I know it's a long journey, but like take us through the journey, just as much as makes sense for you, how you, because, you know, you, like my older brother, went to the Air Force Academy, this super, you know, high achieving, hyper intelligent type A kind of personality. And then you have taken all of that, you know, intellect and capability and acumen towards at first hypnotherapy, and then kind of to where you are now with your radical acceptance and still doing things with altered states. But yeah, just tell us a little bit about that transition.
Well, I think that an attachment, I mean, I was just talking on my own podcast today, like we were mentioning, and I was.
And what's your podcast called again?
It's called Calm, Confident, and Deliriously Happy.
Calm, Confident, and Deliriously Happy. Count me in. Look it up.
So I was thinking about how important it is to stay grounded in the truth when we are approaching different concepts of maybe we can create, because we can create harm, or we can avoid creating harm, or we can actually like reduce harm. And through our actions, based on what the ripple effects of those actions are, and this is something that I focus a lot on, just it's an ethic that I have, is because, you know, everyone is responsible. I think at a spiritual level, people are responsible for how they respond to or the actions that they take in any given situation, because we all have choices. But if we're being conscious in how we create and how we interact with the world, for me, it's a really strong value to consider the natural effects and the range of effects that are going to flow from any course of action that I could choose. So today I was specifically talking about introducing a framework that I created. And the question is it even acceptable to have a framework, to create a framework, when at the bottom of the bottom of the bottom, we know the body heals itself. And really, this is a repicturing of ancient wisdom that no one can own.
Yes.
Slamming TM on the back of stuff, you know, and, you know, like, I'm just questioning, is this going to add to or subtract from?
Yes.
Is this a weight that we place on ourselves to create something like this? Or is this going to relieve suffering by adding it?
Right.
Even there can be too much even of a good thing.
Yes. Well, and I mean, it makes me think of the Tao, or things I've read in various books, that it's like, do not but be done, move not but be moved. And I mean, I think, you know, you and I probably think about those kinds of things all the time, being more of these kind of like doer, leader, generator kind of people. And in the background is this wondering of like, is it actually better to literally just do nothing? Like, where is that balance? Because like you said, the body heals itself. Like, everything already is okay on some level.
Yes.
So
how can we get out of the way of that healing process?
yes.
And exactly. Your words just like reminded me, inspired me to that.
Yes.
Little, you know,
so how? Tell me how.
I am, you know, it is about, we all have perspectives and we bring wisdom from past experience, and then we try to bring those to the decision-making process. And even though I'm talking about discerning about whether framework is appropriate, whether it's beneficial, or it's like literally creating good or could be actually harming, that type of discernment doesn't need to be cumbersome or a source of struggle. It's just, I think like when you reach a certain level of comfort about, I think I've decided, then you feel very free and there's no more back and forth. And we were just talking about that feeling of anxiety before we jumped on the call. Yeah. And I think that that's just a really beautiful segue, because when we don't resolve the question of, am I good with this or am I not good with this, before we do, it creates this lingering, like, phantom question that's hanging out in the back of the consciousness.
Oh, that strikes deep for me.
Tell
right
me,
now.
what are you feeling?
So
maybe you can,
because
you know exactly what this anxiety is about.
yes. It's like, well, and I mean, that's for everything, not coincidentally, I've been reading so many things that keep bringing up anxiety. Like, you've probably heard about the book. It's about cognitive behavioral therapy. I can't remember the author's name, but it's called Feeling Good. And the new version of it is called Feeling Great. But that's about cognitive behavioral therapy. And then I've been listening to this book about the power of Kabbalah. And they're both saying like the same thing about anxiety, which is like, we have this like, can't pin it down, just like feeling of anxiety. But really, it's just, there's like at least one, maybe multiple, like very specific things that unconsciously are causing us to feel that anxiety. And so you just really hit something for me when you were like, we didn't answer that question of like, am I okay with this or am I not okay with this? And a lot of times I feel like it's something, I mean, there's still the like figuring out what it is, but even just that consciousness as we're moving forward in life of asking, am I really okay with this or am I really not okay with this? Because I think a lot of anxiety comes from like not giving ourselves that care of asking that question and feeling like we have to do things like that we're not actually okay with.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I just want to add on to that, like that's so true. And there's elements of, well, I think if we link it back up to also trying to simplify always, because you know that I can go down rabbit holes. I mean, look how we just started out. It was like brainwaves. Like, what are we even talking about?
Always.
So it's the simplicity too of coming back to, are we secure or are we not secure? When we don't feel secure, we question ourselves. And the origins of insecurity can be from any stage of life. It's as early as neurology can start picking up impressions. Your nervous system is like taking in inputs and storing data from womb time, like very, very early. And so if we are not completely 100% knowing that we are secure in body and thought, both in like our cognitive understanding and our physical understanding of ourself and the world, it's almost impossible not to bypass even asking ourselves those questions.
Yes.
Because there's a sense of I should or else I'm going to get whack-a-mole, whatever, by society. I think that's the source of what you're talking about when we don't like go and ask the questions, because it doesn't occur to us when we're not actually secure. We're more worried about becoming secure.
Yes. So how, I mean, what kind of work, like what's some of the work you do to help? Because you talk a lot and I'm, going to link to your bio.
I talk a lot.
Well, you talk a lot about getting to the root cause of things. And I'm saying that what I was going to say is you talk a lot about this in your e-newsletter, your email letter that you send out that I always love reading. And so I'm going to link to everything you, of course, down below. And I just highly recommend that email newsletter.
Thank you. I know that she does really recommend it too, because Virginia literally reads and responds to like every letter that I write. And I don't write more than one every like 7 or 20 days. So it's really kind of trying to be packed with value and create shifts in the moment. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So how do we get at that root cause of insecurity? I mean, how do you get to it?
I want to be on a soapbox for a second.
I'm ready. Get on it.
I think that's such an important question, because right now we are in an echo chamber that is positive. We're all on a path, but it's an echo chamber of awakening. And everybody that's getting a glimpse of higher consciousness is now becoming a speaker, a mouthpiece about fear and all this stuff. But healers are really leading the work because they can actually provide. And so I'm not trying to center myself there. I'm just like trying to shine a light towards the people that are going to be expert are people that can actually answer that question.
Yes.
I find it to be, speaking about harm reduction, like I personally feel pretty impassioned about not amplifying problem states. And when everybody can now understand exactly what the bigger problem is after 2020, there's a lot of them, but they do come down to fear and in fundamental insecurity within individuals that ripples out into society. And then there's systemic things too. Then everybody's talking about it. But who's solving it? You know what I mean? And so yes. I have personally, and I know that you probably I know this is going to resonate for you too. And I hope that it does for others, because I'm just saying it because I think it's subtle and it honestly irritates the shit out of me to see in capitalist society. I think there's ways that it could be done well, but what's happening is everybody's just amplifying pain points. And the truth is, what you speak is what exists. And I think it's really important not to like draw people in by projecting the issue. It's kind of like what they call the concept of nocebo. So docs, doctors, anybody who's in medical care or nursing, et cetera, they're in hospitals, and it's those signs that got put up sometime, I think it was like the 60s or 70s, is what's your pain condition today?
Right.
There's no option to not have pain.
Yes. Like instead of what's your level of wellness?
It's like, it's suggestibility. And when somebody's in pain or in emotion, that is an altered state of consciousness. That is a non-ordinary state of consciousness, because the critical mind is resting because all systems are paying attention to the pain. So the critical mind isn't totally capable when we're overcome by emotion or pain. And, you're asking, how do we help? And I think that there are so many different tools. Which state you're in can be very powerful. That's why, as a given, meditation, prayer, relaxation, mindfulness, flow states, moving meditation, visualization, like a lot of things that I really specialize in as a tool, all of these are applications of altered state of, or non-ordinary states of consciousness. So the state itself, you're dropping in and you're clearing out that conditioned mind and all of the problem solving to rest it, so the body can drop into parasympathetic nervous system operation and begin the work again, return to the work of healing itself. Also, words are powerful. So words are healing. Because in a non-ordinary state of consciousness, you could be saying horrible things to yourself, or you could be saying healing things. In regular state, even with the critical mind active, those suggestions are going to get through to the unconscious, and words have such, association. Words can be very healing. So the words that we choose and the words that we say, and being more specific with our own languaging, can be really powerful. And then the other language of the unconscious is imagery. You can literally visualize yourself in a healed state. You can visualize yourself at that future goal. And there's ways to use image in a transformative way to collapse the problem.
Yes.
And talking about somebody working one-to-one or in a group with people in a non-ordinary state of consciousness, that's primarily what I'm doing, is I'm facilitating, because it's really hard to run your own visualization and be in the relaxed state at the same time. And that's why we help each other in this way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So I'm very interested to see how you will answer this question. Because this has been something that I've been going through a lot with, I'm very into like Carl Jung and shadow integration work and all of these kinds of, archetypal frameworks, which I know you're into too, as far as like tarot goes and things like that. So what about, like, when it comes to healing the root cause, where is that place between like spiritual bypassing, where you're just like, okay, like only say the positive words and affirmations and only think the good things and that, and maybe your answer is going to be that is actually the way to healing. Or where is the place where, you know, like, as I like to think of it sometimes, as the Tao says, like things have to get bigger before they can get smaller. Like, where is that place of like acknowledging and looking directly in the face, like unconscious trauma or like shadow things, or like if I feel anger, like screaming into a pillow to release it and express it, versus being like, you know, okay, I'm going to like repeat a positive affirmation and go to my happy place right now. Like where are you on that spectrum? Because I'm like, I don't know where the hell I am on it, honestly.
Yeah. I actually have really found a lot closer towards the middle recently, because, and I think the possibilities that emerge when we align with and learn from people that do ride the middle,
Yes,
opens up new possibilities. Because my work is, and you know a little bit of my story, but I had a lucid experience last year, followed by a few more lucid experiences for the first time in my life, after years of doing this work for other people and creating lifetime transformations for people very, very quickly. I still keep in touch with a lot of those like beautiful souls and people and friends now to this day. You know, you're one of them.
Yes. And my dad, just to say.
Yeah, I know. I try to respect the boundaries, but like he's one of my favorite. I mean, it was very, very early in my career of doing this, you know. So it's very, very important to me, your family. I realized that I have a very special relationship with pain. And I don't say that lightly, because what you were mentioning when you introduced me was this really intense pursuit. So Tony Robbins, all these people, they say people move away from pain and toward pleasure. I actually have realized something really interesting. There's a segment of the population that doesn't do that. I think a huge part of the population doesn't do that. And that's why absorbing those ideas can actually be really detrimental to people that linger way too long in unhealthy pain. They have developed such a capacity for handling and managing even extreme levels of unhealthy pain. And I say this with gentleness for anybody who's listening who might resonate with that, because it's a very difficult place to be, but it also feels comfortable, because I think a part of it is maybe there's a part of your path or the purpose in that brings meaning to why you're doing that. And there's going to be a meaning for it that you'll discover of what the use of it was. That's what I learned last year, is that I use the tool of pain. Because if somebody can talk to me about their pain, the louder it is, the more leverage it has.
Yes. I just got goosebumps from that, dude. Because that's, I mean, it's kind of like the bigger, and we see this though all the time in like every narrative, whether it's like fictional or real, of like the shittier tragedy, more devastating that happened to people so often. That's what they leveraged from.
What I really want to communicate to others, what I try to message, like sometimes I think the most frequently or the loudest, is how can we pull the timeline in? Don't wait for don't wait. If you can see this is like going somewhere that's not pretty, like kind of like just driving down a railroad track, you know, you're just going to hit a wall eventually. How can we create the choice to address it sooner? And create the like rock bottom for ourselves, like decide this is going to be my rock bottom.
Yes.
I don't need to just ride this all the way to the completion, to the end of the ride. Like, what if I create the end of the ride?
Right. And I'm already like, and in that, I mean, that feels very middle way to me with what you're saying, because in that you're acknowledging like I'm on a downward trajectory and I'm not necessarily in a good place. So you're not like, you know, like pretending that you're in a good place when you're like actually well aware that you're not, but also you don't have to take it all the way to as bad as it's going to get when you're aware enough to be like, this can be bad enough. Like,
yeah. And also there is no as bad as it's going to get, because you could always allow it to get worse. Like
that's
there
true.
comes this, and so that's where we kind of, thank you. I mean, and that wasn't an adjustment to what you said. It was just kind of like a play, an additional usefulness is like, we can always take that lack of control away from ourselves. Actually, there's
Yes.
no arbitrary end. Just because it gets as bad as you can possibly tolerate doesn't mean you don't have the choice to stay longer. When the hiccup happens, we have no more desire to be with that pain because the lesson has been learned. But if we can bring awareness that that's what's happening, can we pull the timeline in and choose an earlier ending through consciousness? And this is getting back, I think, to your original question about what's the shadow versus light and love. You know, I was not attached to, but I appreciated my own story and the gift that I have this really, really intimate, close relationship of comfort with pain that actually I needed to let go of, and I did some time ago. But that I have comfort in that space with other people to help them utilize the pain and convert it into something else, because that is what it actually happens. And there's another piece of it. And that's the real middle way. And so I want to go a little bit more into this conversion thing, because that's the alchemization. That's the recognition of real truth, that like, it's not about bypassing what is and just forcing light and love and cramming it down our throats until maybe it never works.
Right.
Honoring the pain, alchemize it within ourselves, embrace it, understand it, uncover it, love it. That's about gaining perspective and forgiveness. And that's where sometimes regression work or visualization, emotional processing can really be powerful to make those shifts happen fast. Because then you've created the part. But we can get, and this is kind of what happened to me along the way, even though that's my, like, kind of my genius. I'm like, this is my tool. I figured it out. I've got this cool thing that nobody else had ever heard before, you know, and I'm really like appreciating my stuff for the first time ever. And I was called up again to release that, because if that's the method, then are we in need of pain to exist for me to be useful?
Ooh.
If there's no pain, I mean, like, so I need somebody to have pain for me to be able to apply my craft. And that's not, of course, what I was believing, but I just see that there's so much pain in the world. If nobody's suffering anymore, great, then the work is done and we're all in bliss.
Right.
But we can also, and I've personally experienced this, get real addicted to constantly solving or integrating the shadow, and kind of like just another ball of yarn that we need to untangle. There's always another trauma to go pay attention to. And so I think that really is, it's like, what's the middle road between fixation on the cause or transcending the problem state and focusing in higher awareness, looking beyond the problem while not ignoring or marginalizing pain that's real. And I think that that really does come down to discernment as well. Like, how can you really use your judgment to see, like, hey, if this is really acute, maybe we just need to focus on it. What's most important here is that the child is crying.
Right.
Like, but at some point when we're steady and stable again, can we reach for that higher ground? And that's what I've really been, not me alone, but with community. And I mean, there's a lot of people who practice this way and who are practicing that way, my mentor being one of them. It's about realizing that there are ways to transform struggle and release struggle in a higher consciousness and love frequency. It doesn't revolve around focusing in the shadow to resolve the shadow.
Right. And so this
stepping up into the light to let the light evaporate the issue. And there's two ways that it can happen.
Okay. So we're getting into some 5D stuff. Is that correct? And
I think
what
that's
are
one
those?
way of calling it. Yeah. So I've been, well, I mean, I guess I just go to a little bit to specifics because I know the power of understanding your story through revisiting the past or even embodiment work like processing emotion so that you can actually have that release and then all parts of you understand the journey you just went through of transformation. Now your history makes more sense.
Yes.
You could just step up into that. And I was like, well, how do you do that like at scale? And that's what some of the really more advanced, recently channeled works around visualization as a tool for healing, not just meditative relaxation.
Right.
Imagery, but actually using imagery almost like sound harmonics can tune and comb the energy field.
Right.
Like we can do the same with energy, with visualization. We can do the same with visualization. And so we can use the power of our own inner capability for sight to actually refine the issues and release them, not by focusing in the pain and re-experiencing the pain, but actually through shedding, almost like a shedding process. And this is non-technical language that I'm using. It's just my understanding of like how, whether it's sound frequency, whether it's somebody moving energy in your body like an energy worker, or whether it's visualization tools like I have on my website, that's a free resource that will literally create transformation quickly, way different than just using a meditative tool or like a relaxation audio. And that can be found at palladiummind.com/meditation. Just because it's free, it always will be. I've seen it create really massive results. And it was a gift down to me through the lineage from my teacher and from her teacher to her. So it's with permission.
And I can speak to that. So it's palladiummind.com/meditation, which I will link to in the about, and it's free. And I've listened to it several times in this very van, as it were. And yeah, so it's so what you're, I mean, that is definitely part of this big focus that you've had of like, and again, it feels like the middle way, because it's like we can acknowledge that there is pain or there is something that needs to be healed, but instead of needing to go like into the darkness, we can acknowledge the reality of that in the light. And it's just like a lot faster what's happening, because
it's also, I think, more like it's more humane.
Yes.
There's an opportunity not to feel that pain. And if that's the case, is it not more humane to offer the option? And I think up until very recently, there's only really been options for re-experiencing pain or experiencing new pain.
Yes.
Birthing process.
Yes.
And in higher awareness, in that pure vibration of love, there's no separation. So there's no need to be feeling the pain of separation.
Right. That, I mean,
that is something different. People are on different stages of their own journeys. Yeah. So the ability for that to sink in might be variant between, whoever listener.
Well, and again, I mean, I think part of it is like, there's some level of like, we don't need to consciously we already know that we don't need to consciously understand things necessarily in order for them to help heal us. Like, for one thing, I don't consciously understand how my heart is beating right now, but it is. On another level, I don't consciously understand how, a doctor can do a surgery, but it still heals me. And I think that's it's like, why not just do an experiment with yourself? Like I always think of, and I haven't actually read the book, but just the title is enough to inspire me. Gandhi has this, one of his books is called My Experiments with Truth. And it's like, why don't you just do an experiment with yourself, listening to this audio for however many days and like, see what happens, like document it and observe. If you're hearing it and you're not consciously, understanding how that's going to work, well, I don't think we need to consciously understand things to heal. We don't need to consciously understand things to breathe.
I think what's also, I just want to like affirm really quickly that one of the biggest obstacles to people allowing that healing to happen without understanding is the experience of time. Likelihood that the critical mind is going to, at some point, if you let enough time pass, because the result hasn't happened yet in time, then the critical mind at some point, unless you are just a totally a totally enlightened monk, you know, who has completely mastered their minds.
Yep.
It's inevitable that your critical mind is going to step in and interfere.
Yep.
And doubt and the issues themselves prevent the stability of attention in that light for the transformation to occur.
Yes.
This process that I'm talking about, that I now have the ability to share for absolutely nothing, for free. And I keep saying it's free, not because it isn't valuable, but because it is.
Ooh.
Have this. Just have it, because I've seen it produce massive shifts in extremely short periods of time, like as quickly as 1 or 2 days. That's not a guarantee or a promise. It's just plug it up a couple days, see what happens.
Exactly.
One, it's gorgeous. And when we put ourselves in the lake in a state of beauty, we get to align to that beauty as well. And so it was very intentionally created with some beautiful music behind it. And the visualizations are very powerful. So give yourself a couple days. I grew to the point where, and you couldn't, because I do transformation work, like I am such a snob about daily actions. I am such a snob, like it's obnoxious. Like I do anything that requires me to do it every single day. But some transitions, like some shifts happen so quickly. And it's just so beautiful that I find myself really pulled to do the listening. Like I want to listen to it. Yes. You can walk and listen with headphones and walk the puppy. You can do it in the middle of the night if you're prone to wake up and just bathe in that sound. I mean,
yes.
Tell I'm in love.
Yes. And I mean, it's a treat. It's like a gift that you give yourself. And
it's not because you're broken. And that's the other thing. It's like when you keep pouring your attention into this, I don't know, I can relate so much to the reasons why people don't want to do these things, because every time you have to do something that's like fixing an issue, you're sitting down to go, I'm still broken. Yep. And just doing the action makes you feel like, I guess it hasn't happened for me.
And like, I have to do this to get back. Like there's something wrong, so I have to do this so that it's not wrong anymore, versus just like basking in the light because it feels good to be in the light. Like, even though I'm already great and perfect, like, why not just bask in some more sunshine?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I think it's, and, you know, we won't chat too much longer. And of course, with all of these divine dialogues, it's like very obvious to me again, like that I don't want this to be the last time that we speak. And
totally.
I just find it interesting, you know, and if you could just speak to this 5D-ness, because I feel like it's something that is coming up everywhere with so many teachers, like quantum healing, and like, you know, this is the idea of miracles, right? This is the idea that like things don't actually need to happen in space and time. And that's, again, like you said, like where doubt can start to creep in. And so, I mean, I don't really, just whatever comes to you to say about it, like just this idea that like healing doesn't need space and time to happen, and we are able to access those states, or, you know, bask in the fruits of others having accessed them, like your meditation.
Yeah, I think of it like when you're problem solving either at the energetic level, which I'm not an expert, but at the same time, I've had a lot of different people tell me you're doing energy work. It's just because when you create shifts, I think of it like leverage. I mean, I just do. There's less leverage in conscious change because you have to consciously choose it over and over and over again. Whereas unconscious change is then self-perpetuating. If you create change at the level of the unconscious, that's why working with non-ordinary states of consciousness is so valuable, because you're dropping straight into the place that's mechanizing the problem and automating it. And you're just like, let me just put new cogs in here. We're going to sort this, and then we're going to switch the wires so it's doing something different from now on. If you create change in the unconscious, you are creating energetic change as well. If you're with somebody who's skilled in energy work, there is going to be unconscious shift that happens naturally, because then beliefs are going to follow and thoughts follow the essence of what has shifted, whatever that was.
Automatically.
Yeah, and instantly, because you've just created the shift. It's like rewiring. It doesn't take a week for that to kick in. It was rewired.
Right.
It's incredible. And that's why I principally work in that state. The reason I say principally is because once we do a lot of the shifting or a lot of the clearing, we're guiding consciousness in ascension. So we're guiding consciousness and we're raising our own consciousness. And that is more of a shepherding process. I just think of it that way, as kind of stewarding and nurturing and responding to whatever comes up. Having somebody in your corner that is already beyond that of insecurity or fear, well down that path, it's like, I feel it's completely irreplaceable.
Yes.
It's uncharted territory, and there's no reason to go it alone, because you're not alone.
So good. Does
that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I just get it's just amazing to see where you've gone in the past 6 years. And I just can't even really imagine where you're going. I really just see you as such a leader of this movement towards ascension. And I know that there's, like you said, it can become an echo chamber, and it's getting a bit ridiculous with like everyone, talking about needing to heal the pain and like blah, blah, blah. What I appreciate about you is your directness. I feel like you truly do just cut through the bullshit. And that's what I feel like, in your emails. That's what I feel like in your frameworks. And I'm really thankful for like you have this gentleness, and you are a healer. There's also just this very no nonsense like directness that is
true.
Kind of a relief.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you saying that about the leadership too, because I think it's a compliment, and I appreciate it and I receive it. And it also is a reminder. Immediately what it takes me into is that reminder that to be a leader in this conversation is really about continuously choosing to relieve suffering instead of center yourself. And choosing the fastest path there, like I said, it's been a little bit of a soapbox lately, because I've been coming out of certain experiences that were just very informative to how we can become kind of distracted and lost down certain rabbit holes, trying to solve problems that aren't even there. And it's important to continually prioritize choosing the swiftest path through, not because we're in a rush or not because any timing couldn't be perfect, but simply because that's what the truth is.
Yeah. And like,
ourselves in alignment with that.
And it makes me think of, you've probably heard of the Sedona Method, which is...
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, it's really similar to Byron Katie's The Work, if you've ever heard of her 4 liberating questions. But the Sedona Method is like another method of letting go, and it's, cognitive behavioral therapy as well, as far as it's just a reframe, but like you just ask yourself 3 questions in any moment where you're experiencing pain, which is, and I'm very broadly using the term pain, like discomfort, whatever. Could I let this go? Would I let this go? And then when? And the when question is just, it's just like exactly what you're saying. The only reason that that's on there is because like, and sometimes you say no to the first 2 questions and you're not ready. But if you've said yes, it's like, obviously, why would I not do this now? Like now,
Right.
If you're not going to do it now, when? Like, so.
Right. And I think bringing it a little bit full circle to, if you are asking the question, could I? And the answer is no, I think that's a really tough spot to be in.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that. And that's where certain processes, like someone like myself, can really help shift issues.
Right.
As quickly as you can work it.
In non-ordinary states of consciousness. Yeah. Like we need to, maybe if you're consciously like not even there, like there's other ways to be helpful.
Well, and I would actually reword it a little bit. Like if you're consciously like, all I want to do is let this go.
Right.
But it's not possible, right? Because the body is in so much pain. Like it's letting go. That's where it's, that it's in your unconscious. So you got to work in the unconscious.
Yes.
Later, that's how it's going to release, whether that's accidentally or on purpose.
Amen, dude. Amen. Well, I'm just, again, like, thank you so much for your service in the world, for your thoroughness and your authenticity, and for your time in the case of this conversation. And
it was super fun.
So good. Always so good to talk to you. And like I said, I will be linking down to all things Mandy Barbee and your company Palladium Mind down below, as well as that free meditation. And again, signing up for your e-newsletter, all the things, all of the different ways in which people can work with you. And I'm just very thankful to call you a friend, and I love you very much.
I love you too.
All right. I will talk to you soon.
Bye.